this is Dr. Jean. Dear future people, today we're going to make an extraordinary claim. And to back up that claim, we need to be very clear on one point. And this point is going to be important because it's going to affect very essential things. For instance, it's going to determine how we're going to think about such things as competition, conflict, and war. So, let's start by looking at the right side of this slide, and let's look at this picture here. So, what we see here is a number of little balls, okay? A little ball like this, okay? So, now we are going to see that these balls are different in terms of color. So this is green, this is white, this is blue, and this is red. Why is this red? Because we are investigating this particular one. Okay, so we picked out this particular one, and we are gonna investigate it, describe it, and then we are gonna generalize our findings to all other ones. Okay, assuming that this is the same thing as this, except for color, except for position, and except for maybe size. So a handful of things which are going to be different in terms of these little balls, one particular versus all the others. But notice one very important key, essential thing here. And that is that these little balls are essentially the same. Yes, they differ in terms of color, in terms of position, in terms of maybe size, but essentially they are the same. So they are homogeneous, very similar. Now, because they are very similar, they make up a set, okay? So a set of little balls, there is a blue one, there is this white one, they form a set, okay? So there is a multitude of little balls that make up a set. Now, let's now think about what this means. So these here represent physical particles. And physical sciences, surprise, surprise, will make us believe that not just the physical universe, but the whole of reality, okay, consists of little balls like this, which are a set of slightly different but mostly homogeneous multitude of little balls, okay? So, and then, using this hypothesis, they set up experiments using logic and using special methodology to prove that what they hypothesized is actually the case. Well, they set up their experiment, they used their logic, their special methodology to find what they were looking for, okay? So for them, the whole of reality is a physical universe made up by little balls that only differ in a few dimensions: color, position, and maybe size of these little balls. Now, extending the logic of physical sciences to society, okay? Then we see an analogy. We see these little balls, only that we don't call them physical particles, okay? We call them individuals. So we see these little balls, and this is the red one, which we are focusing our attention to. Why? Because this red one is me. Okay? So that is set apart from everybody else. It's me. It's my ego. Okay? So that's why it's red. And so sure, these are my family members and friends who are closer to me, and that's going to make them somewhat special. But the underlying philosophy is that in human society, or any kind of community of the living, okay, you have little balls like this, okay, called individuals, who differ in certain aspects. One is blue, the other one is white, one is closer to me, the other one is a little more distant. One has a bigger size or bigger importance than the other by positioning themselves in certain important places. But basically, all these individuals are the same. They are separate little balls, separate units, which make up a multitude, a set. Okay? So, with the human society is really a set of building blocks, which are like these physical particles here, largely independent, separate, self-contained, autonomous, and they then are very, very similar, differing only in a few special properties or qualities. Okay, so this line of thinking, this philosophy, okay, which is also used by science and by many other religions, many other mass movements, many other ideologies, okay, is something that in Vitologia we are going to transcend. So we go above and beyond this model. Why is that? Because we believe that this model is too primitive and it is very consequential. In fact, the very persons who, and we are not allowed to make historical references here, that the very persons who popularized these kind of ideas, okay, were very much directly responsible for creating students who destroyed half of the world. Okay, so, but again, let's see what are the consequences of this, for our perspective, very primitive, insufficient model. Okay, so you have a situation where you reduce reality to a finite, observable multitude, a set, or separate material objects. This is an absolute simplicity which is very good for children, or it's just very good for mental children. But it's going to have very serious consequences by serving and maintaining mental inertia. Okay? So you have a primitive model which is accepted by many people, and not only that it's accepted by many people, but it is regarded as the only, the exclusive explanation of the world. Okay? The only right description of reality, and that is then accepted, and that causes people to be very content that they solved the universe, and yes, there are particulars that they need to investigate, but basically they see the big picture. Okay, so you have these artificial networks, okay, artificial intelligence, you have these galaxies and stars, you have evolution in time, and you have an ideology which then extends these things as the only exclusive explanation of the universe, which is then spread by media and communication, and these victims here don't even notice that there can be an alternative to this explanation of reality or description of reality, because they are fed this as something that is the only possible explanation and solution. So then, notice that that behind all of this, there is a purpose, there is an intention, okay? And that purpose, that intention is to create something, to create an individual. Let's look at this again. So, to create an individual, okay, which is largely the same as the next, okay, and which only differs in a few particulars that is necessary to perform one set predetermined function, okay? And most of this function involves consumption. So in other words, you produce this homo consumans, and doing that by converting Homo sapiens, somebody who is supposed to be curious, who is supposed to seek alternatives, who is supposed to transcend reductive, simple, oversimplified explanation of the world that are driven by a fixed methodology that is the only good methodology, that is exclusive, okay, and just consume and perform one function, okay? So that's the ideal, homo consumens, the consuming man or human, okay? So for this, to create this wonder, okay, you need, for example, homogeneity, because everybody needs to have the same needs, okay? And materialism, because everybody should focus on a few material things that are then used as a function, okay? So this person is interested in something, and then that something will create a function for this person, and this function is gonna aim at producing material things that somebody is interested in having, okay? So then, now, let's see what conscience is, and we are going to use conscience here. So the conscience is defined here as the awareness of the ability to order and organize life. We are going to use another thing called attention. Attention is a thought vector, is a direction of the mind. The mind is focused and directed on one particular thing. So we need conscience, a very strong conscience, as a general state of awareness of our opportunities and possibilities, okay? And we need to have attention as a reaction to a stimulus to which the mind has enhanced sensitivity. So we need attention to focus on something very, very intensely, because this is a cardinal point, a density for us, and we need to detail it so that we understand it very deeply. So now, if we are very conscientious, and if we have a strong conscience, then we will see that by being very alert and being very aware of reality, we are going to have the possibility, the capacity to transcend classifications and categories. And if we are very focused, then we are going to see how. So let's see what classification and categories are about. Well, we said that most of these individuals here, as most of these physical particles here, are homogeneous and only differ in a few preset variables. For example, color, position, how big they are, etc., size, you know. And now, based on these few categories, you are going to make up sets, okay? How, according to these categories, for example, size or color, you know, one set of individuals differs another set of individuals, okay? So notice that what you are doing is classifying, categorizing individuals only from one or two aspects, okay? Their size, their color, etc. So these are then tools and methods that may be relatively fixed in general, okay? So you are only interested in the size of individuals, okay? And then you make a distribution of these individuals according to size, okay? So you have a fixed and general methodology according to which you look at individuals, like physical particles, okay? And then, for this fixed methodology, you need fixed categories, okay? For example, you use categories like space-time, so when and where a set of individuals are located, okay? Existence, which we already talked about in great detail. But you might also need less fixed and less general, more local categories. The important thing is that you use categories to classify objects or people. Now then, let's make an example of how you actually use these categories, okay? So, for example, there are categories that are very common in everyday life, like similarity, okay? That's a category. One individual is similar in some aspect to another individual. Relationship. One individual is in relationship with the other. Influence, okay? One variable is very much associated with another variable. Influence, okay? Like this fire causes this food to boil, okay? And you have a property-based classification, okay? This set of individuals has this kind of quality and this has that kind of quality. And hierarchy. This person, a businessman of course, okay, is top of this hierarchy based on, you know, how much money people have or how much power people have, okay? So these are categories, these are thought panels, these are common patterns that people use, okay, to largely gauge their position, their understanding of reality. And if we go into greater detail, okay, then we can describe even more categories, okay? So A is an object or a person or a particle or whatnot, okay, is associated with B. So A and B occur commonly together. Or A may be smaller or different from B, or in evolutionary terms or in temporal terms, may be derived from B. A may appear together with B. A is determined by B. A is followed by B. A is located close to B. Okay, so A and B form a set, and there is a certain association between these two. And these are common occurrences of what you experience about A and B. Now, so far so good, but here is the problem. These are dependent on attention focus, okay? So, attention. You are singling out objects A and B, and then you apply a category, okay? A phenomenon, a relationship that binds A and B. Also, duration, scope, and precision of observations all matter, okay? So A may be associated with B for a time frame that you are willing or able to dedicate to your observation. But in another time frame, the association of A and B might be different, okay? So then, here is the problem. Okay, now we are getting deeper, okay? So now we are going to understand what is the problem with sets, multitudes, categorizations, classifications, and using these very, very simple, primitive thought panels, okay? So here is the critique of what I call categorism and atomism. Here's the problem. So A may appear together with B only if influenced by C. Okay? So then if you apply heat to a fluid, okay, then you bring it to a boiling point. But that boiling point is dependent on atmospheric pressure. Okay? So only if atmospheric pressure does not change and is constant, then you have a boiling point that is set for A. Okay? So A is like B only under the influence of C. A is located close to B only compared to C. So if C is not an object of attention, so you are not considering C, then, or you consider it, C as a constant, okay? So you say everything being equal, everything is the same except A and B, okay? Then A and B and their relationship is regarded as absolute. Everything being equal, absolute, okay? Meaning irrespective of C. And the point is that if you don't consider C and you only look at A and B, then you will actually believe it, okay? So you believe that the relationship between A and B is only determined by A and B, okay? So for example, 5 times 6 is 30 no matter what, okay? Because 5 times 6 is a set thing, an absolute thing. So if the observer is taking C for granted and believes C a fixed universal constant, okay, then a local observation is extended on the infinitum to an imaginary infinity, an extension, a projection, a virtual reality. Because you basically think that A and B follow certain patterns irrespective of everything else, C, D, E, F, and G. You see where this leads to? This is a very, 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 very big problem, because if you do not consider a lot of factors, okay, then you are going to have these primitive classifications and sets. Look at this. So you are going to have these classifications and hierarchy and classifications, okay, because you picked out certain artificial variables according to which you make up a scheme, and you ignored everything else that in time or space or otherwise may influence those relationships, those qualities. And you fix these qualities, these properties, as if they were independent of everything else. And this is the same thing in science, same thing in philosophy, same thing in religion. With this, though, you create an imaginary infinity which is only relevant to A and B and their relationship extended, and which excludes other factors like C, E, F, and G. So your reality, your infinity, is going to be posse-dimensional, okay? Means that it's determined by only a few factors. So posse, few, dimensional, factors which describe the system. So only a few factors will describe the system. You see? And therefore you have these very primitive insufficient models, because you pick and choose your variables, your logic, your methodology, okay? And then you're going to find what you were looking for, okay? Even if that's very far from actual reality, or it's close to a reality only with respect to your methods, with respect to where you are looking, and you're finding a very small local results which you are going to generalize, okay? So, however, we here in Vitologia, we see that if reality is in fact rich, it's abundant, okay, with a lot of real variety, with a lot of real diversity, okay? So in an infinite reality, all observations, all categories, all generalizations, okay, are local, because they depend on what, on the basis of your local experiences, you picked out as important, and you are investigating them with your fixed methods, okay? So because of this, there is going to be a huge difference between an infinite reality and the virtual reality, because infinite reality is potentially multidimensional, whereas your virtual reality is by definition posidimensional. So it only has a few aspects, a few dimensions that you extend, generalize, simplify, okay? So that you have validity for your observations. So this is devastating, isn't it? Notice that units like A and B or their relationships are tools of your attention. It depends on what you're sensitized to based on previous experiences, what you're focusing on because you think those are important based on your previous local experiences, okay? But the observer has a specific focus, direction, scope, and intensity, okay, and a starting point. And all these things are by definition local, okay, and secondarily generalized, okay, not general, they are local things. So attention may be then standardized to a local community so that you use the same fixed methods, the same fixed logic, okay, but variety will nevertheless remain, and in time it's going to manifest itself. And also in terms of geography also, because the further away you go, the more different the experiences, local experiences are going to be, and based on that, you are going to have different significance to things, different sensitivity to certain subtle differences, okay? So then, here's what happens. All of a sudden, you will see that this model, okay, of relatively homogeneous little individuals or relatively homogeneous little particles will fall apart. Because what you're going to see is that reality is not homogeneous, okay? It's how you look at reality is that creates the illusion of homogeneity, okay? And the same thing is distinctness. It's how you look at things, what makes separation between this unit and the next, okay? It's a model, okay? And it's very, very insufficient. And this model has only relevance if you are reducing yourself to using common categories. Because it is common categories that produce classifications and produce these hierarchies, okay? If you look at things from multiple angles, okay, these classifications will fall apart, okay? And these hierarchies will also fall apart. Now then, so let's have an example here, okay? So there is a partially standardized attention. So these people here are searching for something as a group, okay? So they all are standardized and coordinated in terms of they agreed to look at something and search for that specific something, okay? But nevertheless, even here, even in this group, okay, somebody based on prior life experience, okay, will be more sensitized to look down here or in the woods or, you know, somewhere else. So everybody will have a different suspicion of where the search for object might be based on previous experiences. And also, maybe this person has a better eyesight, so this person is willing to look far ahead, okay? Whereas this person may have a short eyesight, and that this person may just be able to limit itself to a certain area at a time, and then slowly go to another area, okay? So these people have all different perspectives, with different sensitivity, with different angle, okay, of doing things. So then, here's something frightening. Let's talk about identity and similarity. So, if A and B are entirely similar in all aspects, then A is said to be identical with B. Well, that is for an omniscient being, right? Who is able to see every possible aspect, and then, knowing every possible aspect, that person can say, okay, I am sure that A is equivalent to B. But, okay, if A and B are entirely similar in all that aspects, okay, that I or my group can detect, but I am not omniscient, then I have to assume that there might be aspects that I cannot detect, whereas another group may have the capacity to see that aspect, okay, from which, or the angle from which this is really different from this. So all I can say is that A and B are identical for me or for my group, because in every aspect that I am able to notice or detect, they are the same. But that's specific to me or to my group, not in general, okay? So now, considering all of this, we then redefine philosophy as a social tradition of partially standardizing mental activity, that's logic, in that processing, ordering, organizing information for a given community, according to the needs of a given community. As things or communities change, so philosophy also changes with different categories, tools, scope, sensitivity, attention, starting points, following changing patterns. So what I'm trying to say here is that we started the previous presentation by saying that philosophy is a more systematic way of looking at things, of processing information. Yes, but philosophy is relative to a given community where there are certain interests, sensitivities, certain categories picked out as important aspects, angles that we are willing or able to consider. But there is no such thing, okay, as there is a super community which is able to consider all aspects and then say that this thing is absolute, this thing exists as I see it, so should everybody else see it. So philosophy is a systematic way of looking at things, of processing information, but that systematic way is specific to a cultural group, a community, okay? And so if you're a genius, it's not that you know things just ab ovo, okay? Because you're a genius. No. If you're a genius, that means that you go out and seek out different angles, different aspects, and you synthesize all of those. But notice that this synthesis is local, okay? Because there could be 100 different ways of synthesizing something. And that is not bad, because this creates true diversity. Okay, so I add my experience to the experience of somebody else. I add it together in my own special way. Okay, so of course it's very important to coordinate and standardize things, but by coordinating and standardizing things, we need to understand, okay, that those things are not absolute. Those things are helpful tools, okay, for coordination by creating a consensus, a common view, okay, But when you enforce this common view by violence, by force, then you are going to have a problem, because that minute you are going to create specialized interests, okay? And you are going to create competition and a war, a feeling of separateness, a feeling of distinction, okay? And if you are really very primitive, then a feeling of superiority, like in this picture. Look, in this picture, okay? Feeling of superiority is a mistake, because you regard everybody else from your own point of view, okay? So if you're engaged in chess, okay, then you look everybody at how good they are on chess, and because you're interested in chess, you are really very good in chess, so you feel that you are on the top, okay? But you are basing this hierarchy on the basis of one particular category that you picked out because of your predetermined interest, okay? So now, we are going to say that mathematics is exactly such a philosophy, okay? Mathematics is one aspect of philosophy which picks out one kind of thing which is called quantification, okay? So quantification is based on what? Sorry about going back and forth with the slides, but this is very important, okay? So quantification is based on this. For you to quantify things, you have to use categories, and you have to see things as units. In other words, separate, relatively homogeneous things. Because you can quantify things only if you are counting homogeneous and separate units, okay? So mathematics then is going to be one aspect of philosophy, one subclass of how philosophy can be, okay? And it describes mechanisms of operation with quantity-related tools such as numbers, functions, sets, imaginary objects, and others, imaginary geometry. So mathematics creates a very specialized form of model for you, okay? And remember that the way you look at reality, which is full of abundance and possibilities, okay, is according to your model, okay? And mathematics is a model, and mathematics investigates not reality. Mathematics investigates this model. Mathematics is a language, is a game, okay, which is trying to make this model more consistent. But it never actually looks at reality from a multi-dimensional point of view, because it has set methods, set axioms, set operations, which it iterates and keeps on iterating, okay? And that is not reality. That is virtual reality. And computer games, algorithms, okay, and virtual worlds are all based on this. Picking out a few categories, a few angles, a few aspects, and then categorize and classify the entire reality based on these things, okay? So, the problem is that even mathematicians themselves showed that even this consistency is not absolute, because consistency and coherence has limitations even in any systems, any mathematical systems that are based on axioms. So even mathematicians themselves, okay, see the limitations of mathematical systems. Of course, people at large don't realize this because they simply don't read. they are just mentally inert enough not to be curious and to go after things and understand things, okay? And so they believe that mathematics is absolute. No, it's not. And what is even more important, and what I as a physician actually experienced, and what caused a lot of harm to patients, okay, is when mathematical truths are not only idolized because they are so fancy, like a differential equation, for example, is so fancy, okay? But they are wrongly applied, okay? So differential equations are a fancy way to quantitate dialysis, okay? So kidney replacement therapy, dialysis, okay? Just the problem is that the assumptions behind these, the validity of these differential equations are not there in everyday life. Most of them are not there. So that these differential equations will not be applicable to a given patient. Okay? And then people forget, scientists, smart Nobel Prize winning scientists, forget what the original assumptions were. Okay? And they apply these kind of monstrous things, okay, to patients in situations where the assumptions on the basis of this equation is true are not actually applicable for that patient, okay? And I saw this causing a lot of harm. So mathematics is a tool and a language, or even a game, okay? But it is virtual. Why? It's artificial. Because it's like investigating a teddy bear instead of a bear, okay? It produces its own consistency and produces its own logic by fixing methods, fixing aspects, fixing categories. Philosophy may go far beyond mathematics. And people who fix philosophy to mathematics or to history are gravely mistaken, because mathematics is an artificial world, a tool set, okay? Whereas philosophy has the capacity, okay, to have a system of thinking, a systematic thinking that may evolve. So as observations and conditions and circumstances, okay, change, so philosophy will change with it, because there are some fixations in it. But unlike mathematics, philosophy is not totally fixed. And once again, religion is nothing else but philosophy applied, okay? So when you have a community with a belief system that community practices, okay, that is religion. Religion is philosophy applied, okay? And religion and philosophy is far greater, okay? It has more opportunities, it has more potential, okay, than mathematics or science. And why is that? Because mathematics and science are fixed. They are, for the sake of consistency, limiting themselves using reduction, okay, to only consider a few fixed methods, a very partial logic, okay, and only a few aspects, a few angles that can be standardized. Something that is difficult to standardize cannot be used as a method, an angle, an aspect, and is disregarded. Okay, that is the problem. And logically, if you then equate mathematics and science with philosophy, then you're gonna have what? A reductionist philosophy, a partial philosophy, or otherwise called a primitive model, okay? And then when you enforce mathematics and science as an all-encompassing ideology that is exclusive, that is the only absolute way to describe reality, then you are an inquisitor. Then you are orthodox. Then you are reductionist, okay? And then you live in a virtual world. And this virtual world, because of imaginary classifications, imaginary hierarchies, and imaginary superiorities, okay, from its very birth, always caused competition, conflict, and war. It's very destructive because of its fixations, because of its reductionism, and because of the desire to enforce these kind of reductions and classifications and hierarchies on the world at large. Okay? So now if you see this, you immediately will see that competition, conflict, and war can be, just like unit thinking itself, transcended. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and goodbye for now.